Okay, so Hitler in Germany, he rises to power or prominence in the 1920s, and he has some setbacks. He's actually thrown in jail. He tries to stage a coup in 1923 in Munich. It's defeated, and he spends time in jail. And that's when he writes Mein Kampf, My Struggle. So it's a zigzag journey for Hitler. He doesn't become famous, popular, and powerful overnight. His version of fascism, it had all the tenets that I talked about before: militaristic, nationalistic, belief in a strong government. You still had private property, but the economy was largely controlled by state needs. Hitler had all that, but he added a really sinister element to what was already a pretty sinister philosophy, and that was his idea of the racial purity of the German people. That the Germans, that they were part of a master race that was designed to conquer the world and designed to be the top dog among the world's racial categories. Now, when Hitler was talking about this master race that the Germans were part of, what's interesting and significant, he also included Great Britain as being racially pure as well. Remember, there had been a close relationship between Germany and England. The Windsor family, the House of Windsor today, Queen Elizabeth, they come from a German dynasty that had been retransplanted in Great Britain. And so Hitler had great respect for England, and he always felt, up until the 1940s, and this is something that the documentary that I had you watch talks about, he always thought that Great Britain would make a deal with him, because Great Britain was racially the same as Germany was, or this is what Hitler's thinking was anyway. So he includes Great Britain in this idea of a racially pure people. So he adds to the idea that the tenets of fascism, the racial purity of Germans, and also the importance of the idea of German Lebensraum, living space. If you're looking at the map, let me bring up another map here. What Hitler wanted was he wanted to capture parts of the Soviet Union, which today are independent countries. The Soviet Union was an empire, right, during the 1930s. And many of the nations of this empire are today independent countries of their own, with their own sovereignty. Ukraine being the most famous, although Ukraine's under attack. There's a lot of tension between Putin's Russia and Ukraine. But what Hitler wants in Eastern Europe, he wants to create living space for for the racially pure Germans. And what he wants to do is he wants to settle Germans in this territory. And when he's thinking about this, he's thinking about manifest destiny in the United States. That in the same way that the Americans, specifically white Americans, had not quite exterminated Indians from the area, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, but at least suppressed them very severely, putting them on reservations. Hitler was going to take a play, or take that playbook and do the same thing. He was going to kick out people that he thought were racially inferior from this very, very rich land, the Slavic peoples of Eastern Europe. And he was going to kick them off their land, like the Americans had kicked Indians off their land, and other countries had kicked other indigenous groups off their land. And he was going to resettle it with Germans. So he takes this so-called lesson from U.S. history, and then he uses it as a justification for his desire to take and capture Eastern Europe for the greater good of the German people. So Hitler doesn't only want to recapture the land lost by Germany after World War I. He certainly wants that. He wants to bring the Germans that have been taken from the German nation and moved into countries like Czechoslovakia. He wants to reincorporate them into the nation. But he also wants to expand in an eastward direction into these very, very rich agricultural and mining mineral areas of Eastern Europe and the western part of the Soviet Union. And he wants to kick the people that live there, he wants to kick them off the land, and he wants to resettle it with Germans. You know, one of the astonishing things about Hitler is, given the chance, he would have actually murdered more people than he did. Because as the war begins in the late 1930s and the invasion of Russia in 1941, June of 1941, Hitler's plan is he's gonna take the western areas of the Soviet Union, places that today Ukraine was a big part of his plans, and he was simply going to starve the people to death that lived there. He was just going to deny them food, any kind of resources. He was just going to kill them. He was going to just let them die on the vine, and then resettle this area with Germans. So, incredibly, Hitler didn't kill as many people as he planned to kill. Okay, so this is Hitler's philosophy. Because Hitler is a social Darwinist. When he looked at history, this is the lesson that he learned from history. He believed that world history and international relations was a struggle between races. He saw Germany and the British as a superior race, also other Northern Europeans as well, Danes, the Swedes, the Finns. He saw Northern Europeans especially as the top of the hierarchy in terms of racial intelligence, in terms of racial physicality, in terms of racial potential. When he looked at the East, though, places like the Soviet Union, places like Poland, Hungary, what he saw was a race of Slavs, S-L-A-V, the Slavic people. And he called them the Untermenschen, and I'll write this down. Untermenschen literally means subhuman. So when he looks at the East, when he looks at Eastern Europe, what he sees are people that are subhuman. They are not the same. They don't have the same capability as Germans, as British, as other Northern Europeans. At the same time, he has this ideology of the master race, which is the Übermensch, the master race. And what he wants to do is, he wants to purify the Übermensch. He thinks the Übermensch is in danger, the master race is in danger, the blood of the master race is being diluted by things like intermarriage. Jews who are also considered the Untermensch, subhuman. They are a threat to the master race. This German ideology is very much part, as I think of some of you know, of really what you had in the entire West, including the United States, this idea of eugenics, this idea of blood. Hitler's not the only person that thinks about racial purity, far from it, but he does take it infinitely further than other folks that had an idea of the master race as well. Okay, hold on for a second. I'm just checking time here. Okay, you know what? That's good. So I'm going to stop there and then start up again a second.